Well, happy Tuesday, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us on UpNorthLive Unscripted at 6:30. I am Maya, live in our digital studio today. We have a lot of different stories to talk about, so we're going to start off with weather. I'm going to bring in our chief meteorologist, Joe Charlevoix from our Storm Team Weather Center. And Joe, some areas around northern Michigan, we did see some storms last night. Today, a little different. It was warm, a little bit muggy, but we might see a little more storm action tonight, right?
Yeah, so this evening quiet, but it's after midnight tonight, Maya, when we'll probably get some storms in here. To give you an idea, just the setup here, we have a big line of storms in Iowa, Wisconsin, that area. They are heading toward us, but by the time they get here, it'll be like midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, crossing Lake Michigan. So there's the chance that a few of these could still be on the stronger side, Maya, but they're also at the same time going to be weakening. You know, they're coming in the middle of the night. So that's some good news. We'll see if we get any risk for some severe weather, but certainly some rain coming in later tonight, and then kind of a windy day tomorrow. But at least the good news, the severe weather threat will be over with tomorrow.
Good. And we will check in with you again, Joe, after our first break. And that's also when you folks watching can ask Joe any weather-related questions. But for now, I am going to pull up our question of the day, which today, that is, how would you describe the need for more childcare in your community? So right now, 66% of people say severe, 10% say somewhat, 24% say more not needed, which is pretty interesting because we've been running a lot of stories, especially the past couple of years, about just the growing need for more childcare. So if you haven't voted on our question of the day poll yet, you can scan the QR code on your screen right now, and we're going to take a look at those results more as the show goes on. But the reason why this is our question of the day is because there was a discussion today in Traverse City, and really it was a way to shed light on this pressing issue of the shortage of childcare options in Northwest Michigan. It's an issue that some are saying it demands attention right now. So the goal is to craft a practical, actionable plan to address this crisis head on. Our Allie Baxter was at this meeting, which is from this video that you're seeing now, and she kind of captured the entire discussion. So I think it sounds like from what Allie reported, the goal is not just to talk, but to actually get some real solutions, things that can be implemented now, not down the line. Because let's face it, Northwest Michigan is grappling with a serious lack of childcare resources. And if you voted on our question of the day and you said more not needed, I'm curious, could you leave a comment on why you feel that way? Because it does seem like, from what most people are saying, it is definitely needed. So the meeting at Networks Northwest drew a crowd. They're spearheading efforts thanks to a grant providing ideas to address this childcare shortage. So one suggestion was to engage employers. So maybe offering more flexible work schedules that could ease the burden on parents navigating childcare availability. So that was just one solution that was presented, but really the goal of this meeting, I'll play this video one more time, is to get feedback from the community on any ideas to address the shortage. So if you missed today's event, do not fret. There are 2 more in-person showcases in Cadillac and Petoskey, along with the virtual option. So that is your chance to have your say, give some feedback on what some are calling a very critical issue. And we do have more information about those showcases on our website, UpNorthLive.com. So be sure to check that out. So again, I'm going to pull up our question of the day just as a reminder. If you haven't voted yet, how would you describe the need for more childcare in your community? And also, if you're voting, maybe let us know where your community is, because it could be different here in Traverse City versus over in Alpena versus downstate. So be sure to leave any comments in below, and we will read those comments. But I'm going to kind of switch gears now into our main state story today. So in Lansing, the 4 families who tragically lost their children in the Oxford High School shooting in November of 2021, they're urging the State Board of Education to change their policies. And all the families of the 4 victims, they're really on the same page, saying that we cannot afford to let that kind of tragedy repeat itself, and there's not enough being done to prevent that. So our Courtney Bennett, she's a reporter with our sister station in Flint. She has more on this story, and as she tells us, the Baldwin, Muir, Schilling, and St. Juliana families feel like not enough has changed in Michigan to prevent another school shooting. So here is Courtney's story.
Possible to be a good mom and a grieving mom at the same time. Madison Baldwin's mother, Nicole Bolsolet, alongside the parents of Tate Meir, Hannah St. Juliana, and Justin Schilling. Their children were all students at Oxford High School on November 30th, 2021. A shooter killed them, and since that day, the parents have been fighting for change.
The clock is ticking. We're 2.5 years later, and we've done nothing.
Last year, a 572-page report into the shooting was presented by an outside source hired by Oxford schools. Guidepost Solutions found the district failed in certain areas. Buck Meir's son Tate was shot in the hallway at Oxford High School. Based on Guidepost investigation, Buck says the signs were all there to stop the 15-year-old shooter.
We had nobody at that school that could help this kid, that could identify that he was at the top of the mountain in crisis.
Over the course of 2.5 years, governmental immunity in Michigan has stood in the way of getting answers from the school district and from taking them to court. Several civil lawsuits have gone nowhere because the public school is protected.
Based on current law and policy, can any of you look me in the eye and tell me, honestly, that this will never happen again?
Craig Schilling, who lost his son Justin in the shooting, says there needs to be standards across districts. Steve St. Juliana, Hannah's father, agrees. He believes in mandating threat assessments, among other actions.
Amend existing legislation to add penalties for failure to comply. Right now, most of the laws out there, including the EOP, they simply lack teeth. There's no penalties, and hence the schools aren't worried about not complying.
An EOP is an emergency operations plan. Michigan law requires schools to have them in place. The investigation into the shooting found if the proper threat assessments had been done, the tragedy was avoidable.
What I've been through and what these families have been through, there's no comparison to it. What I've seen and watched to try to get some justice for my daughter is unbearable.
There were no decisions made by the state school board today. However, they did say they recognize that changes are needed. They hope to see more mandates for threat assessments and how to handle the growing mental health crisis facing kids every day. I'm Courtney Bennett reporting.
And we are going to bring in reporter Courtney Bennett now to the conversation. She's joining us live from WEYI's digital studio there in Flint. So Courtney, thanks so much for joining us. So as you mentioned in your story, no decisions were made at the Board of Education meeting today. So really, what are the next steps moving forward?
Well, Maya, thank you so much for having me. You know, the next steps for these parents is they want to see action, not just for Oxford High School or Oxford Community Schools. They want it for the entire state when it comes to school districts. Something that I mentioned in there is that emergency operations plan. It is law in Michigan for schools to submit that plan. However, there's not a lot of follow through to check back with the schools to see how they're utilizing that plan, to see how threat assessment is used, to see how they're checking in to make sure that a child's mental health well-being is, being taken care of and those issues are being addressed. That's what these parents want to see. They want to see change. And another thing that I mentioned was that governmental immunity, that really has stood in the way of any kind of civil cases when it comes to holding the school district accountable in the court of law. That has blocked a lot of cases throughout the state of Michigan, but it's these 4 Oxford High School parents who tragically lost their children in the shooting in November of 2021. They've been really pushing for that change when it comes to governmental immunity.
And it sounds like their big message is, listen, if we don't see any changes anytime soon, they wouldn't be surprised if another tragic incident like this happens again.
Oh, that's correct. Several of them mentioned that, Steve St. Juliana, that's his thing over and over again, that, it happened at Oxford. They always thought when you talk to these parents that it will never happen here. And I'm sure that that's a thought for a lot of parents throughout the state of Michigan that, well, it won't happen at my child's school. But here it happened at Oxford High School. It happened in Oakland County. And these parents are saying this can happen anywhere if we don't take these steps. Now, I do want to mention that a lot of schools throughout the state of Michigan, including Oxford High School, they've implemented certain things when it comes to metal detection to make sure that there's no weapons being brought into schools. But I was talking to Steve yesterday, Steve St. Juliana, and he told me that it goes beyond just adding those safeguards, the metal detectors, the weapon detective systems in these schools. He wants to see, again, these threat assessments and these policies make sure that they're actually being used in school districts across the state.
So is there a time frame of when not only the parents want to see these changes, but also the State Board of Education?
They did not give a timeline today. The State Board of Education, they said, we're listening to you. We understand. They said that there are some action items that they believe that as a state school board, they're not going to be able to address, but they hope that the legislature addresses. There's several bills out there right now that were put onto the House, on the Senate floor, into committees right after the Oxford High School shooting happened. They've unfortunately been stalled in the education committee, so they haven't really gone anywhere. But again, if you ask these parents and you talk to them, they hope that this would have happened yesterday or months ago, that these changes would have been implemented. Buck Meir said that nothing's been done from his perspective when it comes to implementing any of these changes. And I think that that's the root of why they want to continue to push the state to make sure that something gets done, because again, they say that this could happen anywhere.
So going back to what you mentioned about the education protection plan, is that what that was called?
Yeah, the Emergency Operations Plan, EOP.
EOP. Okay, I was a little off there. So each school district comes up with their own plan then, right?
Yeah, so they have to come up with their own plan. They submit it to the State Board of Education. It then gets ultimately filed away. So there's not really a checks and balances. Yes, they have to submit it because it is under Michigan law. It's a recent law. It's not that old, surprisingly, that they've been having to require it. I believe it's 2017 that it became a law here in the state. But yes, it has to lay out whether, what the school district does when it comes to threat assessment, when it comes to addressing students that they believe could be a threat to themselves or other students or other staff or other faculty. But, based on the Guidepost Solutions report that came out in October of last year, they said that Oxford had that in place because they were required to. But on that day, on November 30th, 2021, they didn't follow through. And had they followed through, the Guidepost Solutions found through their investigation that this tragedy was avoidable. And that's what they published inside this report.
And then where's the accountability there?
Exactly. That's the push right now, is for that accountability. But unfortunately, governmental immunity is standing in that way from, ultimately like looking into the school district or holding them accountable through civil lawsuits. Ben Johnson, who's an attorney, he represents several of these families, and it's been his push all along to do away with governmental immunity. It's a law here in Michigan from the 1970s. It's been on the books for that long. So what it does is it protects schools, it protects police, it protects, fire departments, those public entities. So if something were to happen, it makes it so that people can't sue them. And that's the issue right now. And Steve St. Juliana brought up this morning that there's a law in Colorado, and it's the Claire Davis School Safety Act. And what it does is when it comes to schools, they find that the schools have this responsibility to protect kids. And if a tragedy were to happen inside a school, then now under this school act, they can actually go after the school. So if something happens to a child in Colorado, under this Claire Davis School Safety Act, they can then sue the school. But again, they have governmental immunity, which is blocking a lot of these cases.
Wow, that is very interesting. Well, Courtney, thank you so much for joining us and for kind of digging a little deeper into your story. We really appreciate to hear everything from your perspective, since you have been covering this for so long. So thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Maya.
Yep. See you, Courtney. Well, we're going to take one quick break. I'm going to put up our question of the day on our screen right now. And when we come back, we'll check in with Joe, and he'll have more on your weather forecast. Welcome back to Up North Live Unscripted. We're going to bring in our chief meteorologist, Joe Charlevoix from the Storm Team Weather Center. And Joe, you've been tracking some potential storms that may be heading our way late tonight.
Yeah, and that's the key, not the next few hours. So still looks good if you have, take dog out for a walk, things like that this evening. But later tonight, we'll see how these storms kind of evolve here, Maya. They're already ongoing right now. They're still pretty far away from us, but they will get here later tonight. Let's start with that. That's kind of the main weather story that we're dealing with are these storms. So let me show you the severe weather outlook. And again, you see northern Michigan. It's those areas in the reddish kind of pink area. Northern Missouri, Iowa, southwest Wisconsin, parts of Illinois, a moderate risk for severe weather. And then we have an enhanced risk just below that from about Manistee down toward Chicago. And then the rest of our area is either under a slight or marginal risk for severe weather. The big radar picture shows this. Actually, you know what? I'm going to go to the surface map first. See this area of low pressure there near Minneapolis? That's our main storm system. That's lifting north. That blue line is a cold front. All these storms are out ahead of that front, and that's going to pass through here late tonight. So there's a look at some of these storms right now. And the red boxes are tornado watches, which we do have potential for tornadoes, parts of Missouri. Right now, I'll stop the radar loop. I'm going to take the satellite picture off, and then I'll lay down the warnings. And again, you can see these storms they pass through Des Moines, but right here near Kirksville, Missouri, north of there, up into Marshalltown, Iowa, all these storms. And again, this is what is slowly, I'll expand the picture here, heading toward us. The good thing for us here in northern Michigan, though, is that by the time these storms get here, it's going to be late, around or after midnight tonight, and they'll have to cross Lake Michigan. So here's what this looks like. There's around 11:30, 12 o'clock. These storms will be on the other side of the lake, but they will be kind of weakening when they get here. There's still the possibility, though, between, let's say 11 and 1, 2 a.m. for a couple stronger wind gusts with these storms. And by the time they get to I-75, they pretty much fall apart. So incoming line of storms weakening as they get here, and then they'll move out of here. And then tomorrow, just some showers. And one more thing about tomorrow, Maya, it's going to be a windy day tomorrow, not with any thunderstorms, just a windy Wednesday around that low. Look at the winds tomorrow. Oh, wow. Yeah, God, these are the highest gusts, but up to 35 miles per hour during the day tomorrow. So that's kind of what we're looking at for weather. Line of storms tonight, hopefully not too severe, weakening, and then that windy day coming up tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, you'll have an update on those storms tonight on Up North Live News 11. So we will see you then, Joe. But we're going to take one more commercial break. I'm going to put up our question of the day one more time. So if you're watching online, you can scan the QR code and vote on it. But when we come back, we're going to check in with our sports director, Harrison Beebe, to see what he's up to on this Tuesday evening. Welcome back to UpNorthLive Unscripted. It is 6:54 p.m., which means it's time to bring in our sports director, Harrison Beebe, live in our newsroom. Harrison, what is on?
I don't have a watch. I wasn't
I
looking
noticed.
at
I wasn't going to
anything,
say
so.
anything, but
My dad had a watch for forever, but I have not bought into the watch trend now here in 2024. I have a cell phone that basically does the same thing.
But what if your cell phone dies?
You know, I'm pretty good about the cell phone not dying. I'm pretty charge it every night. Make sure you got a full charge to start the day. Just like when you go to bed, you give yourself a full charge.
Okay, so
So
you're
you
on
want to talk about sports, right?
Oh, right. That's what we're going to talk
Right.
about.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
I
I
guess
do
I'll
want to talk
start.
about
All right.
what's going on today.
So the game we talked about yesterday that didn't happen because of all that rain ended up happening today. So Boyne City, props to them for making the bus trip down to play Traverse City St. Francis. In unscripted highlight, Sophie Hardy right here, first pitch of the game for St. Francis, sends it out of the ballpark. So that was pretty nuts to see. I know her dad, Tom Hardy, is the head coach. As the Glads are trying to win the last ever Lake Michigan Conference softball title, the league is going to wrap up at the end of the year. Of course, we know most of those LMC teams are going to join up to form the Northern Shores Conference next year. Traverse City St. Francis will not be a part of that group. A lot of those schools basically, it sounds like, didn't really want to play Traverse City St. Francis anymore in these conferences. But the Glads trying to win one more conference title there before this season wraps up. So these are some of the highlights from Game 1 against Boyne City that took place this afternoon. We'll get you an update on the scores. Let you know if St. Francis closed out that undefeated season tonight at 11.
Now that is a tease, Harrison.
Try my best, yep.
What else are you working on? Tigers game tonight?
It's not a super busy sports day, but I think this one's worth noting. They officially announced the Lions preseason schedule, and there's only going to be one home game. It's going to be against Pittsburgh on Saturday, August 24th, so a few weeks before the season starts. But if you're a fan that really wants to check out a Lions game that doesn't want to spend a lot of money, that might be your best option because I just looked up ticket prices, and that game you can get tickets for that one for well under $100, whereas the cheapest ticket you and I researched the other day for regular season games was going for like well under the hundreds of dollars. So yeah, it's preseason versus regular season, not quite the same experience, but if you just want to be in Ford Field to see a rowdy crowd for a Lions game, that might be your best bet late August. Check that game out.
And you know the fans will still show up, and they'll still
You
be
do, especially for this team, for sure.
All right, well, thanks so much, Harrison. We'll see you back here on Up North Live News at 11 tonight with full highlights on everything you just mentioned. But we are going to take one more break, and then we'll check in with our poll results when we come back. Stay with us. You're watching Up North Live News Unscripted. All right, let's take one more look at our question of the day results. How would you describe the need for more childcare in your community? 67% say severe, 10% say somewhat, 23% say more not needed. If you haven't voted yet, scan the QR code and you can leave your opinion in the comments below. Thank you so much for joining us on Up North Live Unscripted. We will see you back here tomorrow night, everyone. Have a great night.